Well met by moonlight, dear ones. I am Curiosity, and this is my jamboree, a firelit gathering for explorers of the uncanny, the frightening, and the hard to explain. Tonight, we spin tales of suspicious delivery drivers, overly intense strangers, and a salesman who really wanted his commission. So settle in by the crackling fire, lean in close, do a quick head count in case someone got lost, and let's begin. Our first story is from r/Let's Not Meet, submitted by K2 Coma. I live in an apartment with my family, and I'm in a period where I need to focus for my final exams. Today, as usual, I'm sick, so I didn't go to school. I used this free time to practice more for the upcoming tests, and at approximately 8 p.m, my father called me and suggested we take a car ride in order to spend time with each other. My parents are divorced, so I see him less often than my mother, so I was with my father for like 30 minutes and it was nice. We arrived in front of the building where I live with my mother. I said goodbye to him, and I went towards the building. I pushed the button of the intercom so that my mother would open the door, and then I saw a food deliverer with his motorcycle parked just next to me. So here comes the problem. I thought that he was going to deliver something to a neighbor, nothing unusual here. But there was something off. Firstly, usually deliverers in Morocco, I don't know if it's the case in other countries, have a box where they store the food in order to keep it warm, but this guy didn't have one. He was holding the bag with the food in his hand while riding the motorcycle. Also, he opened his phone as if he were going to check a delivering app, but as I said, he didn't have the box or the logo of a delivery service anywhere on him. So even if my mother unlocked the door, I preferred not to open and talk to the guy. I order from restaurants a lot, and I'm used to seeing deliverers, and even talk a little bit with them, to try and make them laugh. I know that it's a hard job because of people being jerks, so I try to be as friendly as possible. So I started by saying, "Hi," and "How are you, bro?" in Moroccan, and the guy was super nice. He had a great smile and a nice way of talking, but he took time before answering me as if he was lagging. But it's okay, it happens. Maybe he was stressed or preoccupied, so nothing to worry about. I asked him what the door number was, and he replied 42, which is odd, because the last door on the building is the 14th. So I told him to check the app, and then I tried to watch his phone. Instead of opening a delivery app, he opened WhatsApp and didn't even open a chat. Then he said, "Door 11, and at this moment I knew something was wrong, because I live at the 12th door, and so the 11th door is right next to me, and I was sure that my neighbours weren't the ones to order, because they were on a trip. So then I got a little bit stressed, and told him that it must be an error, but he insisted on going in, and told me that he's used to delivering at this address, and that he knows where he needs to go. He also tells me that the customer knows him, and asked him to be quick, because he liked his food to be as hot as possible. I clearly said to him that I couldn't let him enter the building, but that I was going to check if the guys of the 11th door were back from their trip, and if so, I was going to let them know that he was here. I also told him that the guard of the building was usually in the cafe nearby, and that he could go talk to him. I also lied to him and told him that my dad was waiting for me, and that I just needed to go to the toilet for a sec. He was angry at first, but he immediately changed his attitude and became friendly again. I asked him to step aside, and then I asked my mother again to unlock the door, and I entered. I was still nervous, and while I was walking towards the elevator, I got suddenly really scared, because I didn't hear the door close behind. I felt so dumb, because I could have closed it myself, but at this moment I was sure he was entering the building. I immediately started running towards the staircase, and at the same time he tried to throw the bag he was holding at me. I don't know why, but he missed. At that moment, I was thinking really quickly. I have Crohn's disease, which is in short a disease which causes inflammation of the intestines and pain, but according to my doctor, it also explains why I'm an anxious person and why I usually think too much. And so I already thought in the past of a scenario where I needed to hide from someone in the building. I know it's weird, but I've come to the conclusion that the underground parking garage was the best place, because it was really large due to the fact that it was shared by 4 buildings. So I ran towards the staircase, and I immediately started going downstairs. Before I continue, I need to say that I'm a pretty tall guy, 6'3", and so it's difficult for me to hide quickly, and so I run, and I hear him chasing me. And at this moment I remember that the other buildings have their own doors in the parking lot, so I run towards one of them. I saw someone from afar and started screaming to call the concierge of the building, but he didn't react. So I entered one of the doors. I go upstairs, open the door of the building, and enter the bakery just next to it. Luckily, I find the concierge and explain to him really quickly what's happening. He immediately got out of the bakery and started chasing the deliverer, but he was too far away and was running towards his motorcycle, so we couldn't catch him. I was tired of all that running, but strangely I wasn't shocked at all. And still, while writing this, I feel a little bit excited about what happened. Am I weird? I'm definitely not going to tell my parents, because otherwise they will forbid me to go out alone or take a taxi. I tried to look out for the bag that he tried to throw at me, but it wasn't there anymore. I know I'm selfish for not calling the police, but I prefer not to worry about it, because they never do anything. Sounds unsettling. Nobody wants to live looking over their shoulders all the time. In case anyone's worried, OP confirmed he's told people in his building to keep an eye out, so stay safe out there. Our next story was posted by Meanwhile in Paris. This story happened a few years ago. I was in my early 20s and was studying in Paris, France. I was going home from uni. I usually took a short bus ride and walked the rest of the way. That day I felt slightly uncomfortable, and I could sense some guy looking intensely at me. I was used to unpleasant, unsolicited gazes, but this time his gaze felt beastly. It's hard to explain why, but I felt like prey being stalked. I decided to get off the bus a few stops early, but I wanted to avoid him and didn't want him to see where I usually got off. Like I learned in the movies, I waited until someone else pressed the stop button and waited until the last moment to stand up and leave. I didn't notice him getting off the bus. Just as I was feeling the relief of having escaped an uncomfortable situation, I looked over my shoulder, and there he was, a few meters behind. I had the distressing feeling he had just looked away the moment I turned. I walked into a shop, took my phone and pretended to be taking a call. When I couldn't see him anymore, I exited and made my way home as fast as I could. I kept looking back in the busy street. I zigzagged, crossed the street at every crossing. Finally, I believed that him getting off at the same stop as me was just a coincidence. When I reached my building, I looked back one last time, and there he was, his alarming gaze on me, smirking. I ran up to my apartment, climbing the stairs 4 at a time. I reached the top floor, squeezed through my door, locked it, and froze. My intercom was ringing. Don't ask me why I picked it up. I regretted it the moment I did. I could hear the opposite flat's intercom ringing as well. He had pressed all the buttons one by one, hoping someone would open. But now he knew my name. Oh, I felt like a deer in the headlights. Frozen. "Open the door, please," said a pleading voice. "I just want to talk to you." Somehow I couldn't move or speak. "Come to the window," he added. "Look at me. You'll see I'm not a bad guy." Something clicked. He wanted to locate my apartment in the building. I was not going to make that mistake. I hung up in shock. I waited by the door without moving for what seemed like hours. When I finally managed to calm myself, I called my long-distance boyfriend. "Call the police," he said immediately. Why didn't I call the police? I don't know. Today it would be the first thing I would do. The fear of making a big deal out of something not important, perhaps? What an idiot I was. I called my best friend instead. I didn't want to feel alone. I told her all about it, and after a while I was feeling better. Safe. We started laughing. Suddenly the intercom rang again. 2 hours had passed since I'd come home. I answered. The voice said my name. "Open, please." I still remember the chills I felt. He was still there. He was there all this time. I was silent, petrified. He was silent too, but I could sense his trepidation. "Let me in. I'm so thirsty," he said. "Just give me a glass of water." This broke the tension. I hung up, curled up in a corner, literally in a recovery position, terrified. I waited. I was scared to make a sound. I knew he couldn't hear me from the hall, but I was scared to even breathe. The intercom rang again. And again. I didn't answer this time. I crouched to the sofa and fell asleep in exhaustion. I heard the intercom ring one more time in the middle of the night. I woke up in the morning, afraid to leave my apartment. I called my dad, who came to pick me up. There was no one in the hall, but there was a note in my mailbox with my name on it. "I'm a nice guy. You should have opened to me." We immediately went to the nearest police station. The police listened and, of course, told me I should not hesitate to call them. My dad called a locksmith to install digicode on the building door the same day, and wrote a message to each of my neighbours asking to not open the door to anyone they didn't expect. He sat in the cafe in front of my building with 2 friends every evening for more than a week. I never saw the stalker again. After this episode, I used a different route to and from uni every day. I kept my phone tightly in my hand and looked back every few meters. Today, I am still very observant of my surroundings. I never answer the door if I'm not expecting someone. So people, if you ever find yourself in any kind of uncomfortable situation, call the police. Don't be an idiot like me. Be safe, everyone. Be safe indeed. If you live in an apartment building and someone you're not expecting rings for you, think twice before buzzing them in. Could save you or a neighbour a lot of trouble. Our last story was posted by Ningensfriend. My mum's dog Punky was a very sweet, loving dog. She was an ESA dog, but trained to be a service dog for PTSD before she lost her leg. I had never seen her get aggressive with anyone in the entire 12 years she lived. She never growled or nipped anyone, but she had no sense of smell, so she loved all animals and people, a real gentle giant among our little terriers at 60 pounds. What I'm getting at here was that her barking at something and being aggressive was so wildly uncharacteristic that I only saw it once. I was 11 and at home with my 2-year-old brother and 6-year-old sister. My then stepdad was at work, and my mum ran up to the gas station to grab a pack of cigarettes. It was only a mile or 2 away from us. For reference, we lived in a 2-bedroom trailer in the middle of the woods on a dead-end road, and you have to really make an effort to get down our road, find our house, navigate down our rickety driveway, and find the door. I'm sitting at the computer, having a grand time watching YouTube videos. Then all of a sudden our dogs, 2 Boston Terriers and 1 Chihuahua, perk up, bark a few times and start investigating down the hall. My siblings were napping in the bedroom at the end of the hall at the time, so I figured they just stirred and scared the dogs. But then Punky sits up suddenly, stands on the couch and puffs her chest out. Her ears are perked up, her fur standing on end, her tail straight up, and then she barks, loudly. I mean, the bark booms through the living room and echoes around, and all of a sudden she lunges off the couch and goes tearing down the hallway. I'm already on edge because I don't think I've heard her bark, ever. She's a Basenji mix, so her bark is more of a baying sound. But this was a big, loud, alert bark. I stand up and go to look down the hallway, ready to fight off what I'm assuming is a shadow monster in the hallway based on how the dogs are acting. But then I hear it. We didn't get visitors because of how weird our house was location-wise, so my 11-year-old mind has no clue what to do here. The only people who showed up were family, and they didn't knock, so I slowly walked towards the door. The knock drew the attention of the dogs and they came running back down the hallway, all except for Punky, and I felt better with our 3 yappy dogs in the room with me, even if they were all the size of New York sewer rats. I opened the door just a bit, and standing on our porch is the sketchiest man I think I've ever seen. I can still picture him perfectly. He was a really thin, tall man with dark hair and a sunken face, bags under his eyes and this half-managed hair, sort of like he just gave it a quick brush and then figured it was good enough. Everything about him seemed just a little too thin, a little too shallow, and his clothes were all wrong too. They were nice, but fake nice, you know? Like a clean, newer-looking t-shirt and new jeans. But he had what looked like a suit jacket on. All his clothes were dark too, despite the fact that it was summer in Texas, and the weather was definitely into the hundreds that day. He also had this plain, unlabeled bottle in his hand. It looked like the label had been covered up and taped over. I stare up at him in confusion, because I definitely don't know this man. I ask what he wants. He smiles at me in this way that's way too fake, like this exaggerated and forced grin, and he spoke in the same voice retail workers do. "Hey there, kiddo. I'm trying to sell this here carpet cleaner." And he shakes the bottle at me. Mind if I come in to show you how good it works? Alarms are going off in my head because he just seemed so off. Looking back with an adult perspective, the fact that he didn't ask if my parents were home is unnerving because he probably knew they weren't, and that's why he was there in the first place. I should have told him to get off our property, or that I'd have to go get my mum, or anything except what I did say, but I didn't. Instead, I just shook my head and said, "No, we don't have carpet." "Well, it works on other things." And he took a big step towards the door and shook the bottle at me. I start to freak out and think to close the door, but the thing is, our front door didn't even lock. Small town, hard to access home. We never needed a lock, so that's basically useless. I'm sure there's something very wrong about to happen, and I'm terrified as I think about what to do in the few seconds I think I have before it does happen. When all of a sudden I hear it. Punky had crept up from the hallway, lowered towards the ground with her teeth bared, and snarling like she was feral. She had slobber just dripping down her mouth, her ears were down and she was ready to pounce. The guy hears it too, and as I look towards Punky she tries to lunge past me, and I just barely catch her with my leg as she tries her hardest to duck past me and attack this guy. He freaks out and runs off the porch without another word, booking it down the driveway as I let Punky out along with the rest of our dogs, and they start chasing him. Our small dogs chase him down the driveway and stop about halfway, barking and jumping about. But Punky stops just on the porch and watches him with her ears perked up, just staring in the distance until he disappears. I swear I saw someone join up with him running when he got onto the road. The second he disappeared, Punky's entire body language changed, and she went back to being the sweet dog I knew, no barking or growling, just laying around, mouth and throat covered in slobber still. I realize my siblings are still down the hall and run to check on them, and when I got to the bedroom my siblings were sleeping soundly, but the bedroom window was wide open, the curtains pushed all to one side, and the items on the dresser in front of the window all shoved around. Someone had tried to climb through the window, no doubt in my mind about it. From what I can gather, the bedroom window was visible from the couch where Punky was sleeping, so I think someone was trying to climb through the window before Punky went after them and scared them off, and the man at the door was meant to distract me. They definitely didn't expect Punky, a bigger dog, because most of the time she was with my mum inside, while our small dogs were the ones that saw people more often. I don't know what they intended to do, but after my mum got home, she took all of us to my aunt's house, and on the way there we saw the men walking up someone else's driveway. Men, plural, because we watched a second one split off to wait by the road. So to the two men apparently going door to door to sell their unlabeled carpet cleaner. I'd rather not meet again. The sun is rising, and our hot cocoa has gone cold. The jamboree is at an end once more. My thanks to everyone who sent in stories or gave me permission to narrate theirs. Remember, I upload new stories on Mondays and Fridays, so be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out. If you have any thoughts about the stories I've narrated, why not leave them in the comments below? And don't forget, if you enjoyed your time by the fireside, to go earn your like button clicking badge. If you'd like a story of yours narrated, I have a submission form linked in the description, and I would love to learn more of your curious experiences and unexplained happenings. I will see you soon, dear ones, and until then, may your nights be dark and your dreams just a little curious.